Hello, I'm Danielle Glesney, and welcome to the Imago Nutrition Podcast, where we give you answers to your questions and practical nutrition strategies to help you and your families flourish. So, what we have today is the question, or what's in it for you, is if you struggle to prioritize cooking, or you feel it just saves time to go to a restaurant, or maybe you want to cook more, but you feel discouraged, don't know where to start, and you've had this as a goal multiple times and it just hasn't happened. So, this would be a good podcast for you and one to share with a friend. So, we're going to start with what is the environment of cooking in America today? Should we prioritize cooking? And if so, how can we do that? So, it's kind of a three-part question and outline of some interesting things, hopefully, that I found interesting and hopefully can be very helpful to you. I know with the new year approaching, people have goals, and sometimes it may be weight loss goals, but sometimes it's, that hasn't worked out in the past. So taking some practical steps of how to get there, right? So, instead of focusing on the number, what are some other things that you can focus on? Or, maybe there's no need for weight loss and just your goal of being healthier in the new year. This might be something to think about as one way or strategy to get to your goal of maximizing your health. So first, let's just look at some surveys and the environment of cooking in America today. So a Harvard Business Review states that only 10% of Americans love cooking. So that is a very low percent. Grocery shopping and cooking are on decline. So what some studies showed were there's three groups that people fell into when it came to cooking. So people who love to cook and cook often, people who hate to cook and avoid that activity by heating up convenience food or outsourcing their meals by dining out. And finally, the people who like to cook sometimes and do a mix of cooking and outsourcing, depending on their situation. So at the time that they started researching those three groups, it was about 15% who love to cook, 50% who hate to cook, and 35% who were kind of so-so on the idea. And now that those numbers went to 10% now love to cook, 45% hate it, and 45% about lukewarm about the activity. So, that means the percentage of Americans who really love to cook has dropped in a short amount of time. So, there's probably multiple reasons for that. Our society is definitely a non-weight culture. We just had a sermon at church on that. And sometimes it can feel more convenient, right, to just order food or run to the restaurant instead of thinking ahead or preparing the meals and assembling. So I think one of the things they showed in the research I was doing was the fondness of food TV has inspired us to watch more food TV and want to eat more, but have not increased our desire to cook. So one thing it was interesting to think about is the food TV has raised our standards to a discouraging high level. So how many of us really feel confident in our cooking skills after watching Iron Chef or any of those shows? So we are watching Lego Masters with our kids. And so this is exactly how they feel after watching Lego Masters. They don't want to play with their Legos because they feel discouraged that I can't do that awesome sculpture, so why even try? So hopefully, and they're not going to listen to this podcast, but we're getting them some books on how to create different sculptures with Legos. So that will be exciting. Hopefully that will encourage them to practice and get excited about Legos again. But so that could be just one reason why we're not cooking as much or not enjoying it. So should we prioritize cooking? I would say yes, of course. But let's just look at, kind of reasons why we would prioritize cooking, and instead of just a general statement. So one reason why cooking is better than dining out, no matter what recipe you use. So I think that is really key. I think sometimes people get caught up in the idea that they need to find healthy recipes, and that is the only thing that they can use if they want to be healthy. So I would venture to say that's not correct. You can use any type of recipe and modify it to, whatever your health goals are. And then also we talk a lot here about practicing mindful eating habits. So, if something needs extra calories, extra fat, or such to have more flavor, then, you have to practice mindful eating habits to slow down, enjoy every bite, and then also have other things on the plate that can help you feel satisfied, so we're not blowing our calorie budget out of the water. So one reason we want to prioritize cooking is you can be in control of the ingredients. So it can help with dietary restrictions such as food allergies or celiac disease, or adjusting for taste preferences such as more spicy or less spicy, or you can definitely control sodium or salt added as well as added sugar. So that is one reason why cooking is better than dining out, is you have more control of how you assemble the dish. And I think sometimes with more control, we do feel like uncomfortable with that. You feel like if you don't follow the recipe, it will not turn out. I am one that hardly ever follows recipes. And so I think one thing I would encourage you to do is to just be bold, and it's okay if you mess up, and just practice is what's going to help you feel more confident to kind of make changes in the recipes as you want. So that is one thing I would encourage you to think about. And then the next thing about why cooking is something we should prioritize is we can better manage our weight and our health goals. So no matter the restaurant, the food is always about taste more than nutrition. And so fast ways to add taste would be butter and salt. And so those are most often used in restaurants more heavily than spices and herbs. Yes, if you're at a really great restaurant, they will be using spices and herbs more. But again, they'll still want a lot of flavor for you to come back. And so they'll still use a lot of butter and salt too. So that is one reason your health goals are at risk when we're dining out often, is because it's not that balance of pleasure and purpose. It's only really focused on the pleasure part of eating. So we really want to have a good balance of pleasure, eating for our health and eating for enjoyment. So our taste buds do adjust to what we are eating. So when we dine out more often, we will start to crave or prefer the foods that are higher in salt, prefer the foods that are higher in sugar, and prefer the foods that are higher in fat. And we cook at home most often, and those amounts are lower. They will be lower automatically when you're following a recipe. And then you can prefer those types of, less salt, less sugar, less fat recipes. So another reason why cooking should be prioritized is you can eat a higher variety of foods. And when you eat a higher variety of foods, you are providing your body with more vitamins, more minerals, more plant compounds. All of those benefits are met. All of those needs are met, when we have more variety in our food choices. So for me, I think this is especially true for vegetables. When I dine out, I think the only vegetables I can recall on the menu are typically like broccoli, zucchini, sometimes green beans, and then the rest of the veggies are kind of hidden in the dishes, such as peppers and onions or garlic. I do see those in there, but again, the only like side dish type of veggies might be a salad, broccoli, zucchini, and green beans. So, yeah, I think you can have a lot more variety than that, especially in your vegetables when we cook from home. Another one is cooking from home can make it a little bit easier to practice portion control. So, obviously, we know at a restaurant they are serving us much larger portions than we really need. And then we lose track of what our portion really might be. We're not really focusing on purpose of feeding our body. We're there to really enjoy the flavor and maybe indulge a little bit too much because it tastes so good. So for me, when I cook, it is so much more enjoyable when it lasts more than one meal. So even if you do cook large portions at home, you typically could repurpose that for lunch the next day or I just really like the bulk cooking because I like to repurpose my leftovers. But if you do not like to use leftovers, you can adjust the recipe to instead of, prepare 4 servings, it can prepare 2 servings, what have you. Or you can just stick it right in the freezer if it prepares more servings than you need and use it later. So cooking at home makes portion control a little bit easier, not, presented with a large amount of food. Another thing, cooking is associated with stress relief and encourages creativity and feelings of positivity. I think often people would say the opposite, that cooking can cause them stress. But if we're in the right place with cooking, it does offer stress relief and feelings of positivity. And I recently was talking to my friend and just really heard it through her nonverbals when she said, I am enjoying cooking so much. I never thought I'd get there. So, she was definitely in the place where she wasn't enjoying the cooking. It was probably causing stress. And now she is really enjoying it. It can also help us connect with people in our house, our children, or our spouse when we have some memories in the kitchen. So there's some countries that actually stress the importance as part of the dietary guideline to cook, the importance of cooking and being in community with people. So getting in the kitchen can bring confidence, and you can learn new things, a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. And cooking also allows one to engage the right side of their brain, which sparks creativity that may not often happen in our busy lives. So we don't get a lot of opportunities to be creative unless that's your job or that's your profession. I don't consider myself a creative person, but after reading this information, I do. I feel inspired when I think of something new and then I find a recipe to look at that compared to what my idea might have been, or kind of adjusting on the fly, adding an extra seasoning or an extra vegetable can make it a little bit more fun. And it's really enjoyable to see how your creation turned out. So one more thing, quote, from my friend is she started her journey by figuring out kind of some gut issues and trying to learn how to heal. And that's happened with food. It started with food. So knowing how the food nourished her body was amazing to her. She was trying new recipes, food combinations, flavors, and seasonings. And she says, the more I cook and try new things, the easier it is becoming to trust myself in the kitchen. So confidence is where she was getting that sense of positivity and enjoying it more. And then she also mentioned her daughter was watching her make these recipes, and she was saying how beautiful and colorful they looked, and they looked yummy, but she wasn't quite there. And she was so wise to respond in that she had to retrain her taste buds to get to the point where she's at today. And she said, well, one day you might be there as well. And so it's just, it's so fun to see that process from the start into the end, and how cooking can bring so much life and community and encouragement in the house. And she also said, I feel like I'm eating real food now. So she feels like a difference in the food that she's making versus the convenience type food that she was buying. So, so in sum, we definitely, with cooking, get more variety, which equals more nutrients to our body. Cooking at home decreases calories, extra fat, sodium, and added sugar. And then cooking at home saves you money and is good for your brain. So we all know that cooking at home can provide so many benefits over buying convenience type foods or dining out. So next, I just wanted to shift to the stressors. So there's so much stress that can be involved in cooking. Not everyone at the table is enjoying the same foods. Making time. So it's like a time management thing that causes the stress. You have to shop for the foods. You have to find the recipes. You have to chop all the foods, chop the veggies, and then actually assembling the meal, prior to when it needs to be served. So before we tackle those barriers, I just want to make a quick side note here. I am not a chef. Therefore, my knowledge in cooking comes mostly from my practice, just practicing it, and my mom. So I think most people do learn through their family. So if you are a parent, that is really something fun to think about, that if you start to prioritize cooking, you can give that as a gift to your children, to be able to teach them what you've learned, and for them to just actually learn through watching you is a huge gift and blessing for them, as well as obviously giving your whole family some really nutritious meals. So some people just assume that dietitians know how to cook, and I just want to tell you that is not true. As a dietitian, I only recall like one class where we looked at what ingredients do in different recipes. And then if you want to specialize in cooking, then you would be called a culinary dietitian. So you would get like an extra certification in education for being a culinary dietitian. I was blessed, though, to have a culinary dietitian friend whom taught me so much, and I was able to even write a cookbook with her together. Probably, I think we finished that cookbook right before COVID. So it was really fun to watch. I learned so much, and how much is needed for attention to detail, because when you're creating a recipe, you have to test it and test it and test it again to make sure it's, a good one. So let's address those barriers to cooking. So stress from people not all enjoying the same foods, stress from time management, or stress from lack of confidence. So I was just going to kind of put it into those, three categories. I think there's also lack of interest too. I think the ones I hear most are lack of time and lack of interest, but there is definitely that one of not everyone wanting the same foods or enjoying the same food. So let's talk about that really quickly. So if you have a family member or someone that you eat with that has different food preferences than you, what I would say is, in order for people, you included, and that family member that has different food preferences, in order for your people to grow and change, it takes time and practice. So by only serving foods that the person likes, it's kind of taking away that opportunity for practice and growth. So I'm not saying we ignore people's taste preferences. We just need to adjust without making an entirely separate meal, because that is where we get more stress, when we're making an entirely separate meal. So for example, I instruct all of my clients with picky eaters to serve at least one accepted food at the meal. So this applies to all families wanting more variety to improve their health. Another great thing to think about is serve disassembled dishes. So for example, Ingredients in a salad can be served separated. Ingredients in pasta can be served separated. Ingredients in tacos can be served separated. So this allows for the people at the table to learn to like new foods at their own pace and still serving one whole meal as one meal for the whole family. So that is what I would encourage you to think about if you find that the food preferences is the main discouragement for you to be cooking. And then if we think about the time required for cooking, you don't want to spend all day in the kitchen. So the barrier of time, first, I would just encourage you to remember that the first time you make a new recipe takes the longest. So after that, it just gets faster and faster and easier. In fact, I have several recipes that I make so often, I don't even pull out the recipe anymore. It's kind of just memorized. And then there's some recipes that you've made so much that you don't even have a recipe. It just kind of, how to make lasagna. It just, it's kind of a thing you've practiced for so long. So, I would just encourage you, if you're just starting out learning to cook, that will be overwhelming, and start with one recipe at a time. And then ease out of the convenience type food. So don't try to eliminate all your convenience type foods and then cook all of your meals at one time. That will be just full of stress and a little disastrous. So one recipe at a time, and just replace, one convenience type food at a time. And then the second, for time management sake, would be to break up cooking into more manageable time blocks. So now is probably the most amount of time in history that people work from home. So, if you are able to work from home, marinate your chicken on your lunch break, or put something in the crock pot, or on 15-minute break, cook the rice, get the rice cooking. There's so many things you can do in a crock pot, and an Instapot, and a air fryer. I don't know, that can allow you to not necessarily be in the kitchen when something is cooking. I've definitely cooked rice in a crock pot before, and it worked. So that was fun. That was really exciting to see. So we have to just kind of find those things that can allow us to do just a little bit at a time. Maybe 10 minutes early, get up 10 minutes early before you need to get ready for work, and, cut the peppers for dinner. So I really love this method of making it easier by cooking in more manageable time blocks. I hate to start a whole meal from start to finish right before, dinner time. So the last one is, the last tip for saving time was to find the way that would reduce meal prep time most helpful for you. So this depends on the person. So if you're one that doesn't really like to cut, you find that very frustrating to cut veggies, buy them pre-cut. That's going to be a huge time saver. And there's nothing different than a pre-cut bag of broccoli versus a head of broccoli where you have to cut the broccoli off the head. So that is one thing to think about, or maybe using that pickup option instead of walking through the store. How much time can you save, using that pickup option instead of walking through the store? The bulk cooking, like I mentioned. So when you make lasagna or enchiladas or chilies or soups or stews, make 2 times as much and put half of it in the freezer. So I love that method as well. It's really helpful, on days where we have activities or sports after school. So that would be another time management saver, if you will. And then the last one, kind of lack of interest in cooking. Just wanted to point out, when I shared that example from my friend, is it started her knowledge of how amazing the food can nourish her body. So that is really what our hope is for this podcast for you, is not just to give you information on how to take care of your body, but just helping you understand how powerful good nutrition is. So I think I have learned how powerful good nutrition is with just just a lot of reading and good resources. So we had a podcast series called Getting Creative With. In that series, we discussed 2 foods each episode and how they nourish your body, and then how to incorporate them into different meals. So I'd circle back to that podcast. That would be just one way to spark your amazement of how food is just kind of is medicine, prevents all these sicknesses, and keeps your body working well. So that would be one way to spark some amazement or be in awe of food. Other way would just be to Google benefits of the foods that you enjoy. So, if you like grapes, what are the benefits of grapes? If you like carrots, what are the benefits of carrots? There is no food, that's from non-convenience type foods that's not nourishing to us. So I think that's another thing that kind of circles back to what I started with is people feel like they need to have a healthy recipe if they want to eat healthy. So if we just think about, on our website, we have the 4 pillars listed out. If we just think about those whole non-processed foods, they will all have benefits, all of them, every single one. And so if you know those benefits, I feel like when you know the why behind something, it can really help you to be a little bit more encouraged to pick up the habit or make the change that you're hoping to make. I think obviously we're not eating food just for their nutrients. We want them to taste good, but just to know the why. When I made that cookbook with my coworker, that's what I wanted in that cookbook is why are we eating smoked paprika? Why are we eating horseradish? Why are we incorporating asparagus? So that is kind of really the encouragement to take the time, take the extra thought ahead of time to be prepared to have these meals. So that's another way is try to spark your interest and be in awe of how wonderful God created all of the foods and that he wants us to have so much variety. And so we don't want to get bored. But sometimes when you do things over and over again, such as laundry or dishes, there is that piece that can cause that repetition that can cause fatigue or boredom. So make sure you mix it up, keep it interesting, and also ask for help. If you live with someone else, ask them to cut the veggies or ask them to do a portion of meal planning and prep. Even if it's just coming up with the idea of what we're going to have this week, can be really helpful. So another way to help with the lack of interest is to make it enjoyable. So for me, I consider it kind of my alone time. I turn on a podcast or some music, and then it feels less like work and more like this is just my time to kind of relax and turn off my brain and just kind of cut these veggies or mix these spices and herbs together for the marinade or what have you. So that's what I would say is when you fall in love with these new flavors or new recipes, you'll start to, if you can start to enjoy just at least one part of the process, whether it's finding the recipes or listening to music and cutting the veggies, if you can enjoy just at least one part of the process, that will make it easier to continue the habit. So just like when we want to exercise more, if we're not enjoying it, it's going to be a lot harder to maintain it. So find enjoyment in at least one part of the process, ask for help, mix it up and keep it interesting. And then also just that lack of interest would be to be kind of in awe or amazement of how the food nourishes our bodies, keeps our bodies helpful. I've talked about those plant compounds. They do have some actions that are similar to our medications, such as for lowering blood pressure. So it's really incredible. It's not just the vitamins and the minerals. There's plant compounds, there's macronutrients and what have you. So there's a lot to look at in increasing your interest in cooking. Cooking classes can be another one. So if you have found this topic helpful, would you please just go ahead and share with a friend or give us a review to let us know how we're doing. You can also subscribe to our podcast, and I hope that you have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.